Hey, so you know how there's certain things that used to be fun, but now they're not? Like, for example, life. That's a bummer. Hate it when that happens. Well, lucky for us, some things can be fun forever, like the Super Nintendo. Bills, responsibilities, a lack of free time, all the garbage that us human beings have to deal with, the Super Nintendo has avoided all of it. Having maintained its playful spirit for all these years, this thing is just as frisky as it ever was, and serves as a great resource to tip the scales of life more in the favor of fun. So, while sure, I may not be able to get a neighborhood Super Soaker battle going like I used to, I can still play my Super Nintendo, and in case you never thought of it, yes, you can too. You're welcome. What's also fortunate is that we live in a time when access to Super Nintendo games is greater than it's ever been. So, whether it's on your phone, your computer, your Nintendo Switch, some random disc that came with a used Sega Dreamcast you bought, or what have you, where there's a will, there's a way, and probably not even much of a will. But which games will people be playing 30 years from now? Well, the Super Nintendo is one of those consoles that many would tell you, myself included, that if a game was ever fun, you will probably always enjoy it, as the games have aged beautifully, thanks in large part to the gorgeous 2D visuals that the overwhelming majority of Super Nintendo games utilized, which have aged nicely and have remained very kind to your old set of peepers, whereas some of those early 3D games maybe not so kind to your eyes. But for Super Nintendo games, I'd say more than kind, they're downright generous. For fans of sprite work, the games still look great, but it's obviously not just about looks, they're fun to play too. Ah yes, fun. Now there's something that never stops being fun. And while most Super Nintendo games could be placed in the enjoy it once, enjoy it forever category, I'm going to be mentioning 5 games that I feel are uniquely qualified, of which I'll explain my reasoning for. Speaking of which, first game I want to mention is about as obvious as it gets, Super Mario World. It simply has to be mentioned. Yeah, I understand it's a safe choice, which, funny enough, some people actually hold against it. Kind of reminds me of how people say drinking water is an uninspired choice for a drink. You can always spice it up with a little something something though. Not a safe choice anymore, but by gosh, is this a unique experience. Point is, there's nothing wrong with an old-fashioned glass of water in Super Mario World. It'll leave you well hydrated and having a good time with the game as timeless as they come. If there was ever a game that will always have its fans, this is it. If you're looking for a unique approach to the game, you could, you could do that, but I would suggest trying to find all the secret exits to the stages. They lead to special extra stages, and it's a lot of fun to try to find everything in the game. Ton of depth and replay value in this game that a person could easily not even realize is there, kind of like how I keep a banana stashed behind my Saturn games. Who could have ever guessed? This game is often considered the apex of 2D Mario games. Well, either this or Super Mario Bros. 3, and I do wonder if Nintendo will ever make a fully fledged 2D sprite-based Mario game ever again. Depending when you watch this, maybe they already have, but if they never do, then this game, along with Super Mario Bros. 3, might always have a special place in Mario's library of games as that game you should play if you want to play a 2D Mario game. Naturally, this game is for fans of 2D platformers, of which there are many of on this console, and I'd say it's a good way to find out if you truly love the genre or not. It's about as good of a suggestion as you can get to gauge your love of 2D platformers. Some would say it's a great way to gauge your value as a human being, too. But the Super Nintendo isn't just about side-scrolling 2D platformers, and if you're looking for a game in a different genre that gets talked about far less than Super Mario World, my suggestion would be Goof Troop. Don't let the fact that this is a licensed game fool you. If you got a problem with this game, then you got a problem with Shinji Mikami. You know, the guy who worked on the Resident Evil games, or At the very least, you've got a problem with one of the earlier games he worked on. And while not as terrifying as the Resident Evil games in a traditional sense, what is terrifying is the amount of fun that you can have playing this game with a friend. The type of fun that'll make whatever you do immediately after seem like garbage by comparison. This game was made by Capcom and kind of feels like a precursor to the multiplayer Zelda games, some of the most fun co-op games there are. Now, you can play this game in one-player mode, and I'd say that it is still fun, but two-player mode is what you want. So make sweet with your sweetie pie, call your long-lost friend you burned bridges with and repair those bridges, tell your kids to take a break from that hullabaloo they call homework, and if you don't have kids, then, well, maybe have kids. Whatever it takes to play this game with two players is gonna be worth it. In fact, if you've ever watched my list of the best co-op games for Super Nintendo, you'll know that I actually have this game ranked as the best co-op game for the system, no small feat, making it a game I can see myself playing for years to come. Something everyone may not agree with, but that's how I feel about this game. The problem I find I often run into when trying to play older games cooperatively with people is that they understandably kinda suck at the game. Contra can be amazing in co-op, but it can feel like being fed to the wolves for someone who isn't already well versed with the game. Goof Troop is very easy to get into for anybody, while still offering plenty of challenge, a lot of which is mitigated to what the heck do I do difficulty. Nothing that'll make you slam your head against the wall though. Hey, why do people do that, by the way? Curious what all the buzz was about? I gave it a try and all it did was just really hurt. In Goof Troop, you'll have to solve block puzzles as well as other puzzles that require utilizing certain items at certain times that, much like Four Swords Adventures, you can only pick up one at a time. This gives your buddy a chance to contribute to your progression with their brain and not just their twitch reflexes. Not that the baddies in this game won't try to get you. Okay, so Goof Troop is a game like Zelda, and next I have another game that is also very Zelda-like. Zelda. Specifically, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, a game for fans of puns, sure, but also one of the most loved games in the franchise. And again, similar to the point I made about Super Mario World, this game could very well wear the crown for best 2D sprite-based Zelda game for a long time, especially considering that Nintendo will likely want to keep exploring where the series can go in the 3D realm, and when they do make top-down Zelda games, they tend to not really bother with many sprites. Point is, A Link to the Past is special and seems like it will always have a reputation of the great Zelda game made by Nintendo that uses sprites, something that Zelda fans will always be interested in. They pretty much got this game perfect. Most of the criticisms I've seen seem to come from hyper-analyzing, a great way to find a problem with anything, by the way. Did you know multiple different people have gotten bothered with me for calling the PlayStation 1 the PlayStation 1 instead of just the PlayStation? What can I say? I'm sick. But point is, most fans feel like A Link to the Past pretty much just nailed it, perfected what a 2D Zelda game could be. Funny enough, the next game on my list is one where I feel like the most common criticism it gets could actually work in its favor. Super Castlevania 4. Don't ever forget to say the super, although, dirty little secret of mine, sometimes in the comfort of my own home, I'll just call it Castlevania 4 to myself. I told ya I was sick. You see, with Castlevania 4, fans of the classic games in the series will often say that it's too easy, which is often in comparison to the older NES games known for being pretty difficult and destroying noobs. For a lot of people, including younger generations, who I'd like to see playing these older games, it can just be too much, and a chance at getting them into classic Castlevania is unfortunately lost. In fact, quick little story for you, I fired up the original Castlevania on NES for my friends' kids, and they really enjoyed while watching me play it. As soon as they tried to play it themselves, it was rage. Maybe I should try a door-to-door business where I do some house calls to have the younger generations watch me play Castlevania to get get them on board with older games. Castlevania seems like a popular enough franchise that there will always be people interested in trying out the earliest games in the series, but public service aside, I just think Super Castlevania will be a great game for people to go back to for years to come. I mean, it's often considered one of the best Castlevania games regardless of all that. It has a ton of cool levels, each with their own unique design, giving a great taste of the Castlevania world and aesthetic. And it appears as if, though, it might be the only Castlevania game that will ever offer a whip that you can attack with in 8 directions, which is a lot of fun to do. Alright, and for my 5th game on the list, we have Mega Man X. You'll start to notice a theme here, as I once again have a 2D sprite-based game in an iconic franchise, and once again, a game in the series that many consider to be the best. Although, with a series that has as many games as Mega Man does, I have just a handful of them here, opinions vary all over the place on which game is the best. But the original Mega Man X certainly has a positive reputation, and perhaps more important than anything, it has a winning formula that was executed very well. You know, it's funny how many games on the Super Nintendo pulled off what I feel are perfect versions of what a 2D game in their respective franchises could be. It's almost as if it's one of the best consoles ever made or something. Oh yeah, lots of people do say that about it. I love how distinct the levels are in this game, and in classic Mega Man fashion, discovering and finding out how to best utilize all the different weapons is a blast, figuring out which weapons work best against which enemies and bosses. Plus, finding all the different little power-ups hidden through the stages gives the game a bit of a Super Metroid or Symphony of the Night exploratory vibe. The power-ups, such as having extra life tanks, can make a massive difference too. Alright, but that about does it for the 5 games I wanted to highlight. Again, remember that I'm not saying these are the only Super Nintendo games that will always be fun. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the RPGs, and this isn't necessarily a list of the 5 games that I think are the best. These are just 5 games that I chose to highlight. If there's a Super Nintendo game you love, I probably love it too. I'm a pretty big fan of the console. But with that said, I would still enjoy hearing which Super Nintendo game you would like to highlight. Whoa, easy there, Sparky, not that kind of highlight. But what can I say? I love hearing people talk about the games they love. So with that, leave a comment down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah. And he's talking about video games.